Sometimes I look at this COVID-19 and climate change in a way in which succeeding in the COVID-19 journey is like avoiding a bullet, and succeeding the climate change journey is ensuring that slow poison doesn't get you. Energy efficiency, actually, I've said many times, is a bit of a no-brainer. It's almost not doing it is like burning money. And I don't know why we would turn around and say that, no, we are happy using more energy to do the same work, and we don't want to use less energy to do it. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Hi everyone, welcome to the first edition of Bending the Lines, a circular lens of industries. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Shashwat Gangwal and I'm the founder of Infinity Box. It is my earnest request to all of you to tune in and spread the word. Because after all the pandemics and the wars end, one war which we will always be fighting for is the one for our planet and for our future generation.
Our guest for today is Mr. Anirban Ghosh, the Chief Sustainability Officer of the Mahindra Group. The group comprises of over 150 companies across 100 countries. Mr. Ghosh has been working in Mahindra since 1999 and has held several roles. Under his leadership, the Mahindra Group has developed an award-winning sustainability framework and was the first group to commit to doubling energy productivity by 2030. He is also recognized as a distinguished CSO and top 100 CSR professionals globally.
In this episode of Bending the Lines, Mr. Ghosh discusses the challenges we face and provides simple solutions for implementing sustainable living. He talks about profit and planet, the concept of alternativism, and the benefit of energy efficiency practices. He cites various examples and efforts being undertaken by the Mahindra Group, like make sustainability personal for the employees, amongst others, in their endeavor towards a circular planet. I would strongly recommend that you hear this episode out and learn from the great man himself. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Ghosh. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be in your presence.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Superb. So today we'll be talking about like not only you and your exemplary career in the field of circular economy, but also the various initiatives that Mahindra Group has taken. Right. So you yourself had held several roles in your highly celebrated career spanning over 3 decades. You were recently recognized amongst the top 100 CSR professionals and as a distinguished CSO, and are also the chair of the FICCI Working Group on Circular Economy. I mean, congratulations on that. It's commendable and inspiring, right? And the reason that it becomes even more inspiring is because of the rare perspective that you hold. You've been a vocal proponent of planet first profit, right? So taking on that stance that it is possible for businesses to be profitable and to make a positive contribution towards climate action, which is very rare in these days. So could you tell us about how you have shaped that perspective? What have been some of the factors that strongly influenced you to become a sustainability champion? And have these factors had any influence on your decision in taking up the CSO role, which is quite different from a lot of the other roles that you've held across your distinguished career?
Let me begin by confessing that right from the beginning, we've always been encouraged to do the right thing. So at a certain stage of the career, when the conversation on sustainability became very important, it was just the right thing to do. Now, when the role of sustainability came my way, the question always was, how does one encourage colleagues who are busy doing things for business? How does one encourage them to see that sustainability will help them do their work better? So there, I must say that I probably got a little lucky in the sense that the projects that we would take up through sustainability would not only be great for the planet, they would also be great for the business. And so we found a space where profit and planet overlap. And it was a good space to be in because folks in business would see that this was worth doing to be able to do their job better and would feel good that they were making a contribution towards the planet. And that's what has made this perspective stronger. And I believe there's a long way to go. There's much more that we can do and many more opportunities that exist in that overlap between planet and profit.
Right. Very interesting and a very positive take to this entire issue, which so I've interacted with other people who have been in similar positions across industries, and they did have a similar take. But the whole idea of other people inspiring you and so many opportunities lying ahead is, I think, the optimism that we are all hoping for in today's date. So thank you for sharing that, right? And maybe I would like to throw a bit more light about what all you've said, which made me say that you're such a vocal proponent of this. In Ellen MacArthur Foundation Circular Economy in India, you have said that we recognize that the future of a circular economy for transition economy like India involves incorporating the informal sector in discussions and assigning them a recognizable place in the value chain. This is an extremely interesting point because the informal economy is known for its jugaad initiatives, right? I mean, if I may, because it's sort of built on the premise of reuse and recycle. So maybe it would be great if you could help us understand how you think India Inc. can engage with the informal economy more, and maybe also enable India's transition towards a circular economy, given that most of our business is still in the informal space.
Hmm. So let's break this into two parts. One, the fact that principles of a circular economy are great for the Indian economy going forward. We know that the entire world, not just India, is resource constrained in many areas, and that mining for virgin materials is is a way of doing things which is not great for the climate and not great for the planet. We are reaching a stage where we will have a lot of resources available to us without mining more for them. So if we are able to recycle the steel that's already there, and if we are able to recycle the aluminium, and if we are able to recycle the plastic and so on, uh, it would be an efficient and effective way of using materials available to us. If we simply rename them as byproducts and not wastes, then the whole issue of throwing them away or discarding them will suddenly be consigned to the dustbin. Now, if
Very true.
the circular economy can be very useful for the country and for industries, what's the best way of making it happen? And here I fall back on my experience in agriculture. In India, we had the first green revolution in the 60s, and we've continued taking great strides in improving agriculture. Around the turn of the century, during the dot-com boom, a lot of people thought that they could walk into rural India and make uh, transformative change on their own by using principles of business and principles of the dot-com world, which were very popular then. It didn't take too much time to learn that unless you let our farmers deal with it themselves, we would not make much progress. So whenever there was a successful initiative, it involved the farmers themselves and involved the rural community themselves. If this learning were to be applied to circular economy, then the issue of reverse logistics, or the issue of getting materials back from places where they've been discarded, becomes very important. And we're most likely to be successful if we engage the informal sector, who are already a part of that ecosystem, and help them do their job better and give them a way of, I don't want to use the word respectable, but give them a more humane existence. And I'm sure we would find that we are being able to bring resources back into circulation much more easily than trying to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Very interesting, right? Because what you're talking about is engagement, but also a sense of ownership, right? Because when you're talking about a tech industry going in, or some entrepreneur going in and saying that I'm just going to use this technology and transform the entire agricultural space, it can't happen unless the farmer himself or their entire family would want to do the same, right? And feels that he is the owner of this thing and it will benefit everybody. This sense of ownership. Yeah, so this sense of ownership that you're talking about when you talk about reverse logistics and closing the loop, how do you think we can engage these scrap dealers? See, this is something that I have discussed in the FMCG bit as well, that there are services in Europe like Loop, or even where people themselves are encouraged to go back to the store and give back their milk cans or whatever and get some money in return. But besides monetary incentives, it's also the culture, right? That I should not be just throwing things out in the open.
So the good news here is that most of the waste is produced by the more affluent households. or industries. So the more affluent households and industries produce most of the waste. Now, it is relatively easier to engage them and in a program where they are sending nothing to landfill. Of course, we have to do it in a way in which the people we are engaging with find it possible within their households and within their factories to be able to take those kinds of action. And in the process, if they are able to get some value for it, nothing like it. Though I dare say, households may not make money if they enable waste segregation and recycling. I'm saying may not because the business models haven't been worked out yet. But I don't think it will be very difficult if to be able to drive segregation in both these areas, that's affluent households as well as industries, if we put our mind to it. Within the Mahindra Group, we've been able to certify 15 locations as being zero waste to landfill. And it's only because my colleagues in the manufacturing environment thought that, hey, why should we be sending anything to landfill at all? And took it upon themselves to figure out ways of repurposing byproducts. So we've got to give it a try. There are parts of India where people have started doing it at scale. There's a friend of mine in Frasertown, Bangalore, who's devoted herself to enabling a zero waste to landfill community in the place where she lives. There's Siddharth in Chennai, who's trying to do the same in the area in which he lives. So over time, I would think that it would be more a a lifestyle thing than something where you're pushing people to do stuff.
Very true, right? And these examples are people we all look up to, right? Because they've taken it upon themselves to not only lead the change but also engage the community. So thank you for sharing that. And I think what we are talking about is sort of what are the alternatives to this, given that this is a time-taking process. Because at a point, you are talking about some sort of a mindset change and your perspective on alternativism is quite refreshing, right? And I'm quoting you from a blog that you wrote for the World Economic Forum, that people must have alternatives if they're to lead a life that is not carbon intensive, because alternativism is not only about adopting solutions when they are available, but is also about adopting practices that are readily available. So this seems like a huge opportunity for companies to innovate in identifying alternatives that are convenient and yet do not require that much of an attitude shift. And one of the prime examples, like you gave, was the 15 locations of zero waste to landfills led by the Mahindra Group, but also another initiative by the Mahindra Group where they forged a partnership with the largest CNG distributor in India to design and develop plants to produce CNG from crop residues and organic waste to tackle the problem that every Delhiite faces, the crop burning problem that every Delhiite faces on every year, right? So could you please talk more about this and also what you think it will take for more companies to follow suit?
So let's take a look at it from the perspective of the average individual. If we have to lead a low carbon life, then we will only be able to do it if there are solutions available. For example, if when we are traveling, and one hopes we will travel again sometime, we wish to travel in a way in which we are not causing a large carbon footprint, we need access to either electric vehicles or trains or subways or buses that run either on battery power or CNG and so on. So if these solutions are not available, it will be difficult for us to lead or to have a low carbon transportation methodology or way of life. You can extend this to almost every area. Luckily for us, many solutions are available today. So if the conversation is only about we will do it when the solutions come, we will be missing out on opportunities today. So we must do what is possible today. We must adopt the solutions which are possible today. For example, if you look around in your own house, if you see any lights which are not LED, you're actually burning money. And it's not very difficult to convert your lights into LED lights. Most of us, when we put a fan up on the ceiling, we never look at it again. And we certainly don't think of changing it unless it stops working. Well, if your fan is 5 or 10 years old, then you have the opportunity of getting a fan today, which consumes 30 to 40% lower energy. And whatever money you will spend on this fan, you will recover within a year's time. So there are solutions available to us using which our lifestyle can become less carbon intensive. And whatever investments we make will also come back to us through the savings that we get by making these investments. So if we have to pursue alternativism in a way in which it is impactful, we must adopt the solutions that we have today, while corporations must work to provide better solutions for the future. So again, let's take one example. Solar energy, we know, is going to be a very important part of the future mix. And every time you talk about setting up large solar energy generating plants, people say, where are you going to get all the land? There is a bright possibility that we can have flexible solar films which don't need large amounts of land, but can be draped on buildings, draped on cars, draped on any structure, and produce electricity. There are enough startups working in this area now, and I would think that there should be investments made to accelerate their development, just as we are accelerating the development of a vaccine for COVID-19 today. Sometimes I look at this COVID-19 and climate change in a way in which COVID-19 or succeeding in the COVID-19 journey is like avoiding a bullet, and succeeding the climate change journey is ensuring that slow poison doesn't get you.
It's sad, the situation that we are in. I'll add a comment to what you just said, right, about adopting the practices that already exist and how corporations need to lead by accelerating the R&D, providing these solutions, making them more accessible. But I think one other aspect that we should talk about is not just making them available, right? It's also about educating the consumer and following up with them. Because so if you talk about LED, for example, right, the government ran this scheme that you need to replace LEDs. There were so many advertisements that it's cheaper and saves electricity, but it was more about and is beneficial for the environment. It was more about the cheaper part of it that sold in the long run. So when we talk about this side of the equation, when we're talking about corporations selling to consumers, Mahindra Group, for example, when it's about selling electric vehicles as an eco-friendly mode of transportation, right? It's just one product in one industry. But what about the other 11 sectors? What initiatives has Mahindra Group taken to ensure that the consumers end up following the responsible end of life practices and moving towards sustainable practices?
Actually, the Mahindra Group has a number of investments in what we call green businesses. And as a corporation, the task really is to lead the horse to water and work very hard to ensure that the horse actually drinks the water. But then that's nothing new. That's always been the challenge of business. And that's probably why you have the function of marketing. But let me tell you about some of the businesses that the Mahindra Group has invested in. Apart from electric mobility, the Mahindra Group has invested in converting waste to energy. So crop residue to compressed natural gas is one you've mentioned, but we also convert food waste to compressed natural gas. You probably know that about 60% of every landfill in our country is actually pure energy, because what we have then is food waste. And it is this food waste that keeps generating methane, and then sometimes the landfill catches fire. So we have a huge opportunity out there to convert food waste into clean energy and use it in our work. Then we've invested in the business of green buildings. All of us live in houses. I don't know whether the house you live in is a green building or not. Mine is not. Unfortunately, it's 30 or 40 years old. But if you and I were to live in a green building, then our energy and water consumption would go down by 30 to 40%. That in turn would reduce the emissions that are generated to generate that power. So green buildings are a very important part of India's climate solution, because I understand 70% of the buildings that India needs have not been built yet. So if whatever we build is green, we will make a big change in the energy consumption of households in our country. So the Mahindra Life Spaces business builds only green buildings. We've also invested in micro irrigation. It's the only irrigation technology in which you can save 30 to 40% water during irrigation in agriculture. And 70 to 80% of fresh water is used for irrigation in agriculture. You and I in our houses and industries use a very small amount compared to agriculture. So the biggest impact on saving water can come from agriculture if micro irrigation were to be adopted wherever possible. And that's why we've invested in micro irrigation. We've, of course, invested in solar energy as well. And then we've gone ahead and invested in a business where we responsibly recycle old automobiles. One very important thing for our country is to get the old vehicles, which have way higher emissions than the new ones, to get them off the road. And we can only do that if we have a way of recycling these old vehicles responsibly so that the metal and the various other parts of the vehicle that can be reused are available for reuse in a responsible manner. So we've invested in a business that does that. So these are some of the green businesses we've invested in. In the last 5 years, the portfolio of green businesses has grown in revenue from somewhere around $450 million to somewhere around $600 million. It's a steady increase. We expect that the future will help these businesses to be much bigger than they are today.
Wow. I hope so too, right? I mean, that's the hope that we have for our country, and it's quite amazing the diversity of businesses that you just spoke about, and also the vast amount of opportunity that we haven't yet explored, which I think should be an encouraging factor for a lot of entrepreneurs and CSOs who would be listening in on this podcast. I think we keep talking about this, right? Somehow that there is an effect of COVID that you also talked about, and I may be straying off course, but when we say that we are struggling with to keep the economy afloat, and that there are a lot of businesses that we have invested in, Mahindra Group has invested in to ensure that we have a greener, sustainable, and circular future. Uh, but like, do you what is your take on COVID affecting that? I mean, do you think these investments, which will take time to give the ROI, or like reach out to the masses, do you think it'll get delayed, not just at Mahindra Group, but also across different groups and sectors?
No, I don't think they will get delayed because the fundamental need that those businesses satisfy, they won't go away. We mustn't look at everything from a COVID lens. Yes, this has been an interruption, the biggest interruption that we have ever seen. And I won't just say in our lifetimes, probably the world has ever seen. It will take us time to get back, but it's not as if many of the needs which these new businesses satisfy will go away. People will still need homes. They will still not want to spend more money on energy in their homes than they have to. Agriculture will still need water. The scarcity of water is not going to go away, and therefore saving water will become even more important. Reusing water will become very important. While we don't have a business in reuse, repurpose of water as of now, it is something that's going to be critical for us in the future. Repurposing waste of all kinds, including solid waste, is going to give us a lot of value going forward. In fact, the back of the envelope calculation indicates that India can save in well above 10 to 15,000 crores of rupees a year if we simply repurpose our solid waste and create fertilizer from it. So these businesses are not going to go away. The rate at which they grow might just slow down a bit for a year or so, but I don't see them going away at all.
Right, very interesting, and I think that's a very like not even a silver lining, right? That's the most optimistic, and I also think there is a lot of reality in that answer, because we are talking about an imminent need that our planet has, and that won't go away no matter what pandemic hits us, right? So, thank you for sharing that. When we were talking about the vast amount of initiatives that Mahindra Group has invested in, I mean, and it's also incredible, right? I mean, the extent to which it does it, because Mahindra Group was the first company in the world to sign up for the Climate Group's EP100 campaign. I mean, that is commendable in itself, because it is such a tall commitment to doubling your energy productivity by 2030. So, what is the group's strategy in achieving this?
Again, manufacturing professionals or people who run companies, till very recently, probably didn't think too much about energy efficiency. The bigger worry, in India at least, was to ensure that energy was available for operations. The cost of the energy was important, in some industries very important, like aluminium, but in many industries it was something that you had to live with. We discovered that there was huge potential in reducing cost of operation or cost of manufacturing, while at the same time reducing our carbon footprint. When the opportunity to join the EP100 campaign came, we went back to see, were we doing any energy efficiency work at all? And if we were doing energy efficiency work, what was the impact that it was having? And we realized that over a period of about 5 years, we had done quite a few projects in that area, and that saving somewhere between 2 and 3% of energy every year was not difficult at all, even when there was no focus on it. So we just did the numbers and realized that what the climate group was asking us to do was quite possible for the business. And if that led us to just increase our commitment a little bit more, it was only good for the business. And we were then very happy to say, yes, we will try and double our energy productivity over a period of 25 years, which is what they wanted us to do. And we were very sure that by 25 years, we would possibly be able to do it in between 10 and 15. Well, one of our businesses has actually done it in 4 years.
Wow.
We're very proud of that business. And we're keenly looking forward to other businesses, whether they've committed to EP100 or not, to be able to steadily increase energy efficiency, get all the cost benefits that they can get out of it, but also continuously reduce their carbon footprint, because it will help them become carbon neutral by 2040, which is a commitment of the group. So energy efficiency, actually, I mean, I've said many times, is a bit of a no-brainer. It's almost not doing it is like burning money. And I don't know why we would turn around and say that, no, we are happy using more energy to do the same work, and we don't want to use less energy to do it. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I certainly hope that this is the same perspective that all the future generational leaders also have, because I mean, this is the perspective that we want and need. And it's amazing that we have somebody like you to look up to, leading it from the forefront. So again, thank you for that. When we talk about energy productivity or any sort of a resource consumption decrease or any circular economy activity where you're reducing not only your waste output but also your raw material consumption, you have to involve the entire supply chain, right? So one part of the supply chain was the end consumer, but what about the employees and the dealers when you deal with them in like multiple sectors? How do you ensure that there is a sense of environmental responsibility that is instilled in them? Because even if the Mahindra Group in itself is doing its best, at the end of the day, the entire supply chain needs to match that, or at least try and move towards that in that direction. So what steps do you think is Mahindra Group taking or could take to ensure that this happens?
Let me throw the suppliers into this mix as well. You mentioned dealers, you mentioned employees. Let's put the suppliers in as well, and then we would have probably got a more complete sense of the value chain.
Sure.
We did a survey very recently in 5 metros of the country, spoke to about 2,000 odd people about climate change, their attitudes towards it. Were they aware about the impact, the negative impact they were having on the climate by the actions they took, and so on. And we were pleasantly surprised to find that awareness levels were well above 90% in many places. We were also very surprised to find that people understood that their actions were not necessarily good for the climate, and that if solutions were available to them, they showed a keenness to adopt them. The study just told us that the soil is fertile, that if we take the right actions, if we light the right fire, it will catch fire. So within our company, we run a program called Make Sustainability Personal. Through that program, we've enabled more than 25,000 employees to convert their houses, the lighting in their houses, to LED. We've got a partnership with Energy Efficiency Services Limited, the joint sector company in the government, which provides these LED lamps, energy efficient fans, energy efficient air conditioners to our colleagues. And twice or thrice a year, we have occasions when our colleagues can go out and buy them at very good prices for their own homes. So over time, more than 10% of my colleagues in the entire group have adopted these solutions already. There is another very interesting program which my colleague who heads manufacturing ran. It was a reduce energy consumption in your home program. And we said that, I think at that time, we said October to March of a particular year, we said, okay, all those who reduce their energy consumption in this 6-month period qualify for this competition. And the 10 people who reduce it the most will have their 6-month electricity bill paid by the company. And that created a very nice sense of awareness and competition, shall we say. And thousands of our workers in the factory joined this program. The baseline was the electricity consumption of 6 months, of the same 6 months in the previous year, so that you didn't get into seasonal effects and stuff like that. And
Of course,
the program continues, and it continues to build awareness, and it continues to enable action by our colleagues in their own households. So these were two examples of how we are trying to make sustainability personal for our employees themselves. The dealers and the suppliers have actually been given exposure to all the actions that we are taking within the company. So many of our dealerships now are moving towards green certification of their showrooms. In fact, the work is going on in a way in which certification agencies are also developing certification programs for showrooms which they didn't have earlier. So then there is, say, in the showroom, there are two other critical issues. The cars have to be washed, the cars that come for servicing and the cars that are there for selling. And the water can be reused. You don't have to use the water only once to clean one car. So I know there is a dealership in Alwar, which is run by a good friend of mine, Nikud Sanghi, who has figured out ways of cleaning and reusing the water at least 7 times.
Wow.
And this is a best practice that is shared with other dealers around the country, because the dealerships don't necessarily have easy access to water. Many of them have to buy water through tankers. So if they are able to reuse water, it is good for their business. They also have the issue of disposing of waste oil, which comes out of the cars that come for servicing. And we have figured out ways by which they can get some value for that oil, which is then uh, processed in a responsible manner at units around the country. So these are ways in which the dealers are becoming greener, shall we say, at their dealerships. And there is a program we have by which we evaluate dealer performance and reward them at the end of the year. 10% of the scoring of that program comes from issues related to sustainability. A similar approach has been taken with suppliers as well. There is an evaluation program for them, and at the end of the year, there is a best supplier award and a whole lot of other awards. There are sustainability awards. And so, in that evaluation program, things which we want them to do in the area of energy efficiency, renewable energy, managing waste, enabling biodiversity, all of that is a part of that evaluation program. And all through the year, sustainability teams work very closely with suppliers, sharing with them programs that have been done within the company and which have given us great results. And they are free to come and learn from us and to see how it was implemented, to go to the same vendors and go back to their units and put these practices into practice, shall we say. So this is how suppliers, dealers, and employees are engaged in the Make Sustainability Personal program. I know that more than 300 of our dealers have adopted and implemented the LED campaign that has been done within the company.
Wow. I mean, we've hit the trifecta here, right? We're talking about personalization and engagement. We're talking about knowledge transfer, and we're also talking about rewards and recognition. That is sort of closing the loop, if I may, with not only engaging them but also ensuring that they follow through, which is quite amazing. And I think this is very valuable advice for all companies out there with their large group of suppliers and dealers, that these are the three things that you need to do. And I mean, you'll be in the footsteps of the Mahindra Group. So again, thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the points that I would like to highlight is the idea of personalization, right? And why it is so critical, maybe from a different industry, right? So if you talk about food delivery, which something is something that I deal with. So when I tell people that it is 36,000 tons of single-use plastic waste that is dumped in landfills every year in India, right? They are affected by it, but they're like, okay, sure. I mean, I just used one container; it doesn't matter. But when that is the issue, right? It's not personalized. It's not telling them the amount of effect that each single plastic container that they use daily causes. But when and if in a hypothetical world, I were to tell them that, you know what, if you were not to give away or like use one single-use plastic container but reuse it, you might be this saving the lives of a turtle who would choke on it, or you might be preventing these many landfills from burning. That would be the effect, and that would be the words, the methodology that we have to follow, which is exactly what you guys have done by personalizing it. And kudos to that. I mean, really, really inspiring stuff, and I just hope other industries follow suit. um, Maybe one last question, right? So young entrepreneurs like me or CSOs in your peer group who are trying to help their firms to move towards a more circular direction, or entrepreneurs who are starting up and want to have a sustainable foundation of their business, because like you said, people are aware, but at the end of the day, despite the awareness, there are more hurdles for a social entrepreneur as compared to the usual entrepreneur, right? So what would your advice be to them?
So let me look at it this way. Change can happen if you, as an entrepreneur, believe it is the right thing to do. However, change can happen faster if you, as an entrepreneur, find that not only is it the right thing to do, it is also better for business. Then, even those entrepreneurs whose awareness or connection with, say, the right thing to do from a climate perspective or the right thing to do from a planet perspective is not very high, even they will adopt those methods because it's great for business, and the benefits to the planet will become a co benefit. The challenge lies in finding solutions like that. It's not that people don't want to do things from the goodness of their heart, they do, but the number of such people is less compared to the large population that we have. Also, the amount of work that gets done is also less compared to the possibility that exists. And we will be able to realize the potential every time we find a solution that is not only great for the planet, but also great for the business. The young entrepreneurs, when you're starting out, you have a tough enough job as it is to make your enterprise viable, to make your business stand on its feet, and to make sure that you are working with your customers and clients in a way in which their numbers and their custom continues to grow over time. It is tough enough to do that, and we can see that from the mortality of startups all around us. In the middle of all of that, if you want to also ensure that you're not being irresponsible towards the planet or the community, I would think that you'll have to make it a part of your uh, policies and commitments. You will, of course, keep an eye on whether it will be a drag on your business or not. But wherever possible, if you were to use it as a part of your policies and commitments, make it a part of your work culture, you will then, every time you're faced with a possibility of adopting a more planet friendly solution, which is feasible, you will lean towards that rather than blindly going for an alternative solution. So I suppose it's about building work culture, having a set of values which are not only great for business, but are also great for the planet and the community. Now, if that sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo to you, let me reflect on how did some organizations become more value based than others when they started, say, 50 years ago.
Mhm.
We all know that some organizations are more value based, some are less value based, some are have higher levels of integrity, some we believe have lower levels of integrity, and so on. How did that happen? Because 50 years ago or 70 years ago, being a reliable, progressive, dependable organization that treated its employees well was the sort of North Star. And there were a lot of brands around the time India became independent. In almost any industry, you would find brands like Standard, Progressive, and Reliable, and these would be the names of the company or the product,
Yeah.
because that was the most important value. And the organizations, and if I were to make a plug for Mahindra, such as Mahindra, which did uh, have great value for good value systems, built it into the culture of the company. So I guess my advice to young entrepreneurs is that if you believe it is more important to do business while being friendly towards the planet and being great for the community, make it a part of your work culture.
Wow. Um, I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, I'm actually truly very inspired by that answer. So thank you for sharing that. And I think we have actually seen the shift that you just referred to, which is social but for business, right? And I think that is the way forward to an extent, if you want to build a business but also be socially profitable, socially like beneficial. If you want larger adoption and you don't want it to be doing maybe just out of your habit, or that sort of that is the way forward. And I could not agree with you more. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's been an absolute pleasure interacting with you, and it's sort of a fanboy moment. So thank you for taking the time out and sharing these amazing insights. And I certainly hope that people who would listen to the podcast actually try and mend their ways and move towards a more sustainable and circular future. And I certainly hope that people who would listen to the podcast actually try and mend their ways and move towards a more sustainable and circular future.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation. Uh, these conversations are always very pleasant for me.
Yeah.
And, this is part of my job. So I just enjoy talking about it. And as long as we keep finding wonderful solutions, both for the business and the planet, I don't think I will call this a hard job. But the day those solutions start drying, actually, I don't see those solutions drying up at all. Because thanks to technological developments, better and better solutions are becoming available with every passing year. So what we are finding difficult to do this year, 3 years down the line, we might just find that it's easy to do.
Yeah, true.
And that's what gives me hope that countries will achieve their NDC if they try, that corporations will achieve climate goals if they try. Because if they try, the solutions will start appearing in front of them very steadily.
True, and it's up to the new generations, the Gen Z and the millennials, who have to try, right? Because they are the ones fighting for the future now. So I can only hope they do that. And with technology, like you rightly said, where it's more accessible and affordable, and more achievable, we just keep hustling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Super. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Ghosh. Again, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.